Today's guest on the Minnesotan Pod is Steve Geider, the recently retired head coach of the Blaine Girls High School hockey program. We sit down with Steve for a little over an hour, and we discuss everything from getting his start in coaching almost 40 years ago to stepping down from the Bengal bench this past season to his work with the veteran community in the Blaine area. Hope you enjoy.
You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. Cause it get cold like Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota.
All right, we've got Steve Geider here, longtime head coach of the Blaine Girls High School hockey team. Steve, I have a bottle of Martinelli's sparkling cider here to commemorate your retirement, but we can't get it open. So I'm just going to give it to you. Here you go.
Thank you.
I'll invoice you later for that. Steve,
Sounds
thanks
good.
for being here on a beautiful day.
I appreciate it.
You came all the way down from Blaine, where your current title, among many others, is a tech paraprofessional. So can you tell the world and me, for my benefit, what a tech paraprofessional does?
Well, we have 3 people in our department, and we take care of all the technology things in the school. So computers, smart boards, LCD projectors, different software, things like that. A main thing is Chromebooks, because those have all gone one-to-one. So repairing Chromebooks, issuing Chromebooks, things like that.
All right, so if you say Chromebook, do you just get super mad when you see I'm using an Apple laptop right here?
No, laptops are fine. I'm not a fan of Chromebooks. They just essentially just internet searching devices. But I'm not a fan of Macs. I'm a regular PC Windows
You're a
guy.
PC guy?
Yeah.
All right, well, what kind of laptop are you using right now? This is interesting to me.
I have an HP laptop.
You've got an HP. All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into the hockey. You have officially stepped down from your post as the Blaine Girls High School coach after 20-odd years. You've been with the program since the beginning in the mid-'90s. If you could sum up your journey in a few words, and trust me, there will be more, but if you could sum it up in just a couple of words, what has the past almost 30 years meant to you?
Well, I think it's meant everything. It's been, coaching's been a huge part of my life for, coaching youth before high school for 40 years. I started at Blaine in 91 with the boys, and then the 93-94 season with the girls. And, over that time, the kids that I've met have been absolutely unbelievable. And, definitely life-changing moments being with them. And, there's been, as high as winning a state championship to, a 7-win season. So there's been a whole variety. But no matter how we've done record-wise, the quality of kid that I've had a chance to work with has been absolutely incredible. And, it's hard to step away because of the kids. But, if you think about it, it's like every year, like a new group comes in and, boy, I think I'll stick around for this group, and then it's, it never ends. And every coach I know said, when it's time, and they're right. I mean, when you do know when it's time, and I've stepped down as a head coach, but I'll pursue being a goalie coach somewhere, and still stay involved.
I'm sure that if anyone goes to a Blaine game next year, they'll still see Steve Geider somewhere in the building.
Yeah, we have. I mean, the hardest part of leaving is the quality of kid that we have returning. Mm-hmm. If there was a reason to stay, they're it, because it's they're good hockey players, but they're far better people. So I do have to continue to support them, because it's in the short time form good relationships with them, and I'd like to see how they progress.
All right, let's go back to 1991. I was born in 91, so you've been coaching hockey for longer than I've been alive, so congrats on that.
That makes me feel good.
How did you get into coaching to start? Is it something you always wanted to do? Did you always have that itch to stay involved?
Well, I got into coaching because of my high school football coach, Dave Nelson.
Legend.
Yep, and to me, the guy walked on water. And I just watched how he coached us and the impact that he had on people. And that's what really, kind of got me excited about doing it. Plus the ability to stay in the game. It's you can only play so long, and then it's hard to just give up that compete and everything that goes along with all that. So it gave me a chance to stay back in the game. And my neighbor behind us, his son played. And he was just starting out as a mite hockey player. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to coach this team. You want to help? I go, yeah. So we just started coaching, and, it was a good time. And I'm just like, okay, I like this. And I had played football in college at Mankato and screwed up my back, so I couldn't play anymore. So then I transferred to St. Cloud, and then I started coaching. It's been there ever since.
Where did you start coaching in St. Cloud?
No, I coached at Blaine. I had just gone to St. Cloud State University to finish my college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For a second, I thought, ooh, you coached in St. Cloud. Wow,
No.
You've been all over the place.
No, my first year was at Blaine with football in '91, and then I coached Totino Grace hockey in '91. Then came to Blaine in '92.
Okay, so you're North Metro through and through.
Yeah.
No chance of getting you to come down below that threshold, is there?
Well, there's a chance. You never know.
So coaching in 91, did you know that you wanted to do football, hockey, or baseball? Because you've coached all three. Was there a specific sport that you wanted to do more than the other two, or was it all three all the time?
No, I didn't do baseball. I did track.
You coached baseball at some point, though, didn't you?
No.
What?
No.
Well, my Google's wrong then. I apologize for that.
Must have been another Steve Geider.
Must have been another Steve Geider.
No, I had done track one year, and football and hockey were my passion. I did a lot of stuff for USA Hockey, so that took up my summer, and going from fall to winter to a spring sport and then doing the summer got to be too much. So I said, I gave up the spring sport, give myself a little break there.
All right. There was no walking away from football, though, especially not when you're coaching under somebody like Dave Nelson. You mentioned how you thought he walked on water when he was your coach. When you were both coaches, when you were collaborators, what did you take away from Dave Nelson, maybe in terms of organization or in player relations? Because Dave Nelson is one of on the Mount Rushmore of high school football coaches in Minnesota. Dave Nelson's up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tried to take as much as I could from him. I've had multiple coaches over my life, and some good, some not as good. But everybody, no matter how good or not as good the coach was, you always learn something from somebody. And from him, it's how to treat players, just the work ethic that's involved in being a coach. And when we first started, I mean, our Sundays were just miserable. We would spend 12 to 14 hours up at the school game planning. Back then it was VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, there might have been a couple reels when I first started.
Microfilm?
Yeah. So we, just the time spent that you have to put in to be a good coach. And organization's never been a problem. And when we were going, I was actually the guy he trusted. He's like, guys, can you do this for me? Because I don't really trust anybody else to do it. So it was, it's just being a professional and how to treat people and things like that he's tops.
Interesting. And you coached interior defensive lines, so you're with the D tackles and the nose guards. What was harder, coaching interior defensive line or coaching junior varsity hockey?
Well, it's drastically different.
Yeah.
The defensive line aspect. I started out as a sophomore coach until '96, then moved up to the varsity, and obviously I like that a lot better. I like the competition aspect of it, and the players are obviously better. With the JV, it's a little bit more laid back. You have kids that most of them are just having fun, mm-hmm. and a lot of them don't have aspirations to be varsity players or move on to play college. So they're playing for the sheer enjoyment of it. So it's drastically different. Both are good in different ways.
You think it's a little bit like a teeter-totter where you get that competitive itch scratched on the football field, but then you're reminded on the JV ice that, this isn't life or death. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, and I mean, it's drastically different for me because you're coaching football, which is ultra intense. Mm-hmm. And then you go to like a boys hockey practice when I was doing both, still pretty intense. And then you go to the girls varsity practice, which is, still pretty good. Yeah. And then I was doing both JVs, and it's different. I like the kids, and it's just an entirely different teaching. I mean, you're really, really basic versus like coaching defensive line at the varsity level. I mean, it's, a lot more advanced techniques.
I would imagine it made you a better coach, though, to have to fill both roles of teaching D-line techniques to varsity defensive linemen, which would be like teaching calculus, and then teaching junior varsity hockey players, which would be a little bit more like teaching algebra. So it sharpened both sides of your brain as a coach.
Yeah, and early it was like teaching plus minus.
I didn't want to say it. I figured we'd go with algebra.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, and I mean just the coaching is different. I mean, just going from boys to girls, and you go from football, which is quite a bit more intense, and then you go transition to hockey, where it's, if you coach at the same intensity level, it doesn't go very well. And what I've found over the years is that they started to balance a little bit, where I think coaching football got to be a little bit more, I would say a little tougher. It's harder to be as intense as you were early.
You can't just scream your head off at the kid.
No. Kids get sad when you do that, and it's just kind of a product of what's happened. It's everybody's a lot of kid gloves now.
A lot of kid
athletes.
gloves.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's a good way to put it, because I'm not super young. I'm not super old either. I'm 31, so I had my share of coaches that were a little more intense, but then I had my coaches who were a little more, as you just said, kid glovey. So a balance of the two, I think, works out for most kids. But I think it's interesting how coaches have had to evolve. It seems even in the last 2 or 3 or even 4 years since the pandemic, I feel like coaching has taken on a whole new role. Would you say that's also fair?
I think it's absolutely fair.
Okay.
We were saying over the last 10 years, it's amazing how things have changed. And, the past couple obviously is drastically different. And, I think it's a lot of it's a product of everything that's gone on outside of hockey. With all the stuff the kids do during the summer, back when we first started, it would be like the hockey season's approaching for high school, and kids were just unbelievably excited to get out there because, we haven't played hockey much, and kids really look forward to it. And nowadays it's, here we go again.
Jeez.
In these elite leagues and premier prep leagues that they have, I mean, I think they might have finished a week before the season started this year, but in the past, that league would end on Sunday, and we're practicing on Monday. And the kids are like, okay, here we go again. And it's a lot different, as far as that aspect goes of it, is just the pure looking forward to your team. Some kids, they'd rather play on their summer team.
Yeah.
Because talent's better, obviously, in some cases, because you're playing in these leagues with the best players. Then you come to your team where, you might have a couple, but not the quantity.
I want to touch on that for a second. What is that like as a coach when you do have a super talented player who would prefer to play with their summer team? How do you bring that player back to the corral, as it were, as in, this is your team right now, and you need to get over what you think you're missing?
Yeah, and we haven't. I would say we haven't had that too much, and we've had some pretty elite players. I think of our 2017 team: Emily Brown, Paige Beebe, Kenzie Wiley, who are all D1 players. Those kids love play together, and that whole team. They still get together in the summer. You'll see, 7, 8 kids going to like Kirsty Ziegler's cabin and hanging out, and they would rather be with that group. Mm-hmm. We had one elite player this year, and she liked being at our school, and she had been recruited by other schools. I mean, she could have left, and she chose to stay, and thankfully for me,
no
got
kidding.
to work with a great kid, and it's a definite difference maker for us.
Okay. We will touch on the 2017 team because you and I both have very fond thoughts about that team. But I want to go back again to the beginning. Was there a moment when you got onto the ice, your first year coaching hockey, and you thought, girls hockey specifically, and you thought, what did I get myself into?
I would say no. It's I first got started with the girls because our boys JV had practiced the hour before them. And I was watching it. They had just started, and I'm watching their practices and was watching the goalie in particular. And I'm like, ooh. I mean, she was not very good, and she didn't want to play goalie, but they needed a goalie. She was like
that makes it hard.
Yeah, she was like the 6th best skater on the team, and she was a catcher in softball. So the head coach was like, "You're going to be the goalie." And I mean, that was a personal challenge. That was tough. And at the end of the season, she had just come up and said, "You know what?" She said, "I hated playing goalie, but I just want to thank you because you made it tolerable for me, and I appreciate all your effort."
Wow.
So at that time, it was actually fun because we had some highly competitive kids, and the eagerness to learn was off the charts. And boys, a lot of times it's like, you'll get a couple players like I don't know if they think I know more than you, but it's kind of that attitude. And some weren't tremendously coachable, and these kids would absorb everything.
Wow.
So in that aspect of it, I thought it was really fun because you could coach and people really accepted the coaching.
Yeah. Did it help at that point because Blaine in the mid and late 90s was one of the booming suburbs just outside the metro, and Blaine had some really, really good female hockey players. You think of a Jody Horak, a Tiffany Hagg. Did that make it easier to stick with it coaching girls? Would it have been harder for you to stick with it if you'd been coaching at not to throw Austin under the bus, but in Austin where those top players weren't so readily available?
You know what, it might have. I was really lucky because when after those first years, we had a goalie named Katie Bodie. She was the first winner of that Let's Play Hockey Goalie Award, all-state kid. So she was just a blast to work with. And then there was an overlap with her and Jody Horak. So Horak, as a sophomore, I was talking to her parents, and they're like, "Well, what should we do?" And I said, "Well, best case scenario," I said, "Katie is going to play most of the games just because she's played every game for us." I said, "Why don't you have Jody play JV for the boys? I'll still be working with her, and then she can come in the next year." And she'll be all state and she'll win the goalie award. So she played 2 years for us, and then we follow that up with Kim Hanlon and Ashley Nixon, who 3 of the 4 won the Let's Play Hockey Goalie Award. So it's pretty loaded with talent there, and you got high quality goalies that were motivated to be really good. So I mean, for me, just being the goalie coach part of that for the girls, it was exceptional.
Did they make you look good, or did you make them look good?
They make me look good.
There you go. That's the right answer for a coach is to put all the praise on the players.
Yeah,
right?
you try not to get in the way. You hope you have an impact on them, and you hope you make them a little bit better. But you can't take a kid that's awful and make them a Division I goalie. I mean, if they're going to be at that level, they're obviously going to be pretty good when you get them. And so I was lucky on that end.
Your time with the girls team is well documented. You were working with both. You won a state championship, though, with the boys in 2000. What was that experience like?
That was the best hockey, or I would say the best coaching of my life. To win a state championship, because in my career, I've been in 7 of them, and we've only won 1. And once you win it, boy, when you lose them, it's even tougher.
Hurts a little more.
Yeah, and it's just... I mean, the group we had was really special. 3 of those kids had gone on to play in the NHL. And, I mean, they were just...
Bochensky moved on.
Yeah, Matt Hendricks. Yeah, and he's working with the Wild right now, Brandon Bochensky, and then Trevor Frischman, who's the boys coach at Blaine right now.
Ah, all right.
Yeah, so, those guys, because I remember in 1999 we lost a heartbreaker to Hastings in the section or the state quarterfinals. We were behind 4-1, came back, tied it, and then we made a mistake late, and they turned it over, and Dan Welsh came in, not like I remember this, and he goes right in and goes high glove on our goalie, Justin Johnson, and I remember falling back against the glass and see 0.2 seconds left on the clock, and, we go from probably one of the greatest comebacks in state tournament history to losing a game with 0.2 seconds left. Had we gone to overtime, we had the momentum, could have been different. And I remember we were watching the Roseau game after us, and we're sitting up behind the net, and it's Matt Moore, he had gone to Air Force, and Hendricks and those guys, and they're like, "Geiter, there's no way we're not coming back here next year and winning this whole thing." And their work ethic over the summer was, the best of any team that I've been around. And they won the state championship because they earned it. They worked really hard for it, and it was unbelievable.
When those guys told you there's no way we're not coming back here, I think that high school kids, not that they're, full of bleep, but it's kind of hard to take the emphatic words of a 16 or 17-year-old seriously because they're 16 and 17 years old. But did you believe them right away when they said we're coming back next year?
Absolutely, because I mean, we've been working with those kids for a while, and I mean, just give you perspective, Matt Hendricks, who I would consider the greatest leader of any high school kid I've ever seen in my life. He's been a captain for 3 NHL teams and Team USA, so they recognize his leadership abilities. And Alex Ovechkin was actually not happy when he left the Capitals. So you got the best player in the world kind of wanting you to stay. It says a lot about you. And Matt, that senior year, would make the guys go up to the school on Sunday and lift. Coaches can't be around, so that was player-led, player only, went up there and lifted. They would go to other people's houses, and they're shooting pucks. And on the playoff run, we had scored 2 goals where we knocked pucks out of the air. And he's like, "Oh, that wasn't a mistake." He said, "When we were at Ramfo's house, we'd shoot, and the pucks that would miss, we'd flip them back over the net and work on just knocking them out of the air." So he said we used to practice that all the time.
The moxie on this kid.
Yeah,
huh? Jeez.
Yeah, and at the time too, we had like personal training during our summertime. So kids would come in for a half an hour lift with a personal trainer, and then at that time too, I was running a pretty intense dryline program. So those kids would go lift, and then Matt would usually be working in the sod field all day. He'd come and take a quick shower, lift, and then come and train with me, and that group was unbelievable.
Wow.
There was no doubt in my mind that they were going to come back and do it.
If there's something that you would want younger players to take away from Matt's leadership style, you mentioned the hard work and showing up every day, but was there something about the way he related to the other players around him that you wish more young players had? Was it a natural gravitas, or was he a good listener, or what?
He was just a presence. Just the way he carried himself, and he's very humble. If you saw him walking around school, you would never know he was an elite athlete, because he was the starting quarterback on our football team too for 2 years. State quarterfinals both those years. We lost to Cretin with Joe Mauer at quarterback. Yeah, so that was tough, but just the way he carried himself, and kids just had respect for him, and that they have had it the entire career. And there was a point during the season where Brandon Bochenski, we had moved him up to Hendricks' line, and Bochenski was an elite goal scorer. He was really good. And I was standing at the red line one day, and they're coming up ice doing a rush drill, and he wasn't working very hard. And Hendricks came up and was like, "Juice, get your ass going." I don't know if I can say that on camera.
You can say ass. That's okay.
And all of a sudden, the next rush, it changed immediately. And he just had just an aura about him, and he related well to kids. He treated kids really well. We had a teacher that had just brought up a story where I think he was him and some other guys were kind of picking on a kid in class.
Where Matt was picking on somebody in class?
Yeah, and it was him with some other kids. I don't know how much he was doing, but this Pete McKenzie, who I was coaching with the girls, he was the teacher. And he was telling me this story, and then he said you could just see a look in Matt's face, and Matt just went up to that kid, apologized, and said, "Boy, I'm really sorry about this." And, he totally made up for anything that he did. And that's just kind of the character there. I think it was kind of a thing where you get caught up with people that are around you, and you just get in the moment of it. Yeah. But, he's the only one that went up and apologized, and, he generally felt bad for what happened.
Wow, this has become the Matt Hendricks quality hour here. Maybe Matt Hendricks will join us here in our studio eventually.
Well, you could be so lucky. He is phenomenal.
You mentioned sometime off camera, sorry to reverse course a little bit, you called yourself the mythical state champions.
Yeah.
Now tell me about that.
So 93-94 was when girls hockey got its unofficial start.
Okay.
There was 8 teams. We were one of the original 8. And we finished that year 16-0, so we were the only undefeated team. So I should get a ring made. So
you should. You should get 2. You should have 2 state championships now.
So we kind of labeled ourselves as the mythical state champs because we were the only undefeated team.
All right, here's the real question. Which one meant more, the mythical state championship or the 2000 state championship?
The 2000 one.
Just barely, though,
just
right?
Barely.
Just barely. The loss against Hastings, what's funny, I was watching highlights of that a few weeks ago, actually. My YouTube algorithm's all messed up, and for some reason that came up on my YouTube and I watched it, and I didn't remember any of it because I was so young at the time. But you mentioned another heartbreaking loss, and this came at the international level, where your goaltenders set a record for shutout minutes, and you ended up losing to Canada in the gold medal game of the U18 Women's World Championships. It was in Finland. So did you like Finland? If you had to move to a Scandinavian country, would it be Finland?
Finland was a lot like northern Minnesota.
Okay.
At least the areas we were in. So we stayed at their athletic center. So we stayed right on the campus of that. So that's where, I mean, we didn't get around very much. There was a rink that was there that we would practice at. And then there was another rink, I forget the name of the town, that would be the main game rink. It starts with an H.
Not Helsinki.
No.
Okay.
No. So, but it was a lot like northern Minnesota. I mean, it was a lot of pine trees and it's a beautiful area. And when we were there too, it was during New Year.
Okay.
So after one of the games, there's a Scandic hotel, and we had the whole team over there celebrating New Year's. They had fireworks and stuff, so pretty cool.
Wow. Where does that rank in your list of hockey memories?
Oh, there's a lot of memories. That was unbelievable. Anytime you get a chance to work with the best players, especially the best players in the country, and at that level, essentially the world, it's definitely an honor to represent USA. Doing something like that is definitely an honor. I mean, every game that we won, they would play the U.S. national anthem, and you just get goosebumps, as being a part of that. And the staff was awesome. Jeff Campersall, who's the head coach at Penn State now, he was the head coach. And then Courtney Kennedy, who's at Boston College, she was an assistant with myself. And just the athletic training staff, the strength staff. I mean, it's developed great friendships, and we stay in touch via Facebook. We played it's like they never play outside. So one of the nights we had a staff game. So all the coaches and all the support staff, there's an outdoor rink, and we went out and just played a little shinny hockey out there. And everybody's like, "This is awesome." I'm like, "Well, we used to do this every day."
Who won that inter-squad?
Our team did, but
it had to be your team, didn't it, Steve?
Well, it was kind of funny too, because we the team doctor, this Allie Howe, and our athletic trainer. Mm-hmm. So they asked me one day, "Hey, can we go out and work on stick handling?" Because they hadn't played before. So I'm like, "Yeah." So we went out there, and I was teaching them how to stick handle and shoot. And there were some guys from Russia. And this guy comes up. He goes, "Hey, how about the international game?"
Oh.
I'm like, "How about you bring it on?" So we set up a couple nets. So they had 3 guys and this kid, and they had all skated before. And I'm with these 2 that
talk about going back to plus minus.
Yeah. So we I turned to him. I go, "There's no way we're losing to these guys." And I said, "Just get me the puck." So we ended up winning the game 7-1. And the one, our trainer turned it over right in the slot. And it was funny because I went on Facebook and just kind of said, "Hey, we were out on this rink, and this Russian guy comes up, says, 'How about the international game?' I said, 'How about you bring it on?' And then I go, USA 7, Russia 1, no miracle on ice necessary." Well, it was about 2 hours later, the guy Facebook friend requested me. So I go, "Sorry about that, just having fun." He goes, "No, it was great." Yeah.
You almost sparked international conflict with an outdoor rink game playing with a couple of teams.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was 2013. We still keep in touch, so it's fun.
Oh, my gosh. At the risk of diving too deep into an assumption, I would say you're a competitive son of a gun, Steve.
Yeah, I am. We tell the story to our kids. It was not a proud moment, but I used to work in special ed department. Mm-hmm. And one of us, our physical therapist for our team, her name's Joan Bomert, we would work with kids in the weight room a lot, which, I mean, we had some just incredible stories that came out of that. But one of the girls, she was a cerebral palsy kid in a wheelchair, and we're playing badminton. I was letting her get ahead, and but there was a place where I could hit it where when she hit it, it went straight down the net, and it was impossible to return it because we were playing with a balloon. Mm-hmm. But then there was another place I'd hit it where I knew she'd pop it up. Well, she started getting a couple points, started getting close, so I'd lob one, boom, she'd get boom, I'm bouncing them off her head. I mean, it was fun, and the Phi Ed teacher was a longtime friend. He goes, "Guider, you're pathetic. You can't even let a girl in a wheelchair beat you." I go, "Hey." I go, sometimes kids need to learn how to lose too. So not a proud moment, but it was funny.
Okay. I don't mean.
Yeah, I
don't mean to laugh.
I don't like losing.
But I think that underscores just how people, and Tony's big on this. My boss, Tony Scott, if anyone listening doesn't know who Tony Scott is, he's big on adapted floor hockey, and he went to the state championship game. I think it was last year. And he came back and he said, you would not believe how competitive some of these kids are. Yep. So maybe that's something for neurotypical people to think about is, you know what, just because somebody is not neurotypical doesn't mean they don't want to win and they don't want to play hard and they can't handle losing. Yep. So good. I think it's good that you just couldn't let a little girl beat you.
We had our girls hockey team. We had gone out because our floor hockey team was pretty good. So the coach contacted me. So we brought our kids out to just play against them. Mm-hmm. And it was competitive. I mean, they're bumping our kids. And
good.
It was intense and it was fun. Our kids had a blast.
That's awesome. Okay, that's a top 5 podcast story. Kayla, we're going to need to clip that one. She says yes. Let's go to this 2017 team. And I wanted to save them for a little further into this podcast because I used to work for the State of Hockey website where I kind of had my pick of which games I wanted to go to. And I went to a Blaine game really early in the season. And I just kind of fell in love with that group. They just seemed like they were so cohesive as one and they played so well. And you were such a good interview after games. Plug. But tell me a little bit about that team for the people who might not remember your Bengals from the 2016-2017 team.
Yeah, I consider that probably the greatest team that's ever been assembled in any league, in any sport. We didn't win a state championship, but as far as quality of kid, competitiveness, you name it, they're smart, their work ethic, everything about them was at an elite level. And I've coached other teams that have had, a few kids like that, but I've never coached a team that's had that, as you said, cohesive of a unit. And a lot of those kids, you'll see on Facebook, you'll see 9 of them still getting together over the summer, at a cabin and doing things like that. And it's just, it's a special group. And every day you came to practice, it was intense. And our 2 best players at the time were Emily Brown and Paige Beebe. And it was funny in practice because sometimes you just sit back and observe a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you would see those 2 always adjust themselves in line so they would always go against each other. And the old saying of iron sharpens iron, those 2 were it. And it was battles. And then I'd go watch them play in college. And, mm-hmm. They're banging. And, you talk to them after and it's like, well, yeah, I didn't know it was her. But I think they did. But there's a competitive streak there, but they made each other better. And, we had lost Brown that year to the U18 team. Mm-hmm. And this Kenzie Wiley we had, I just went up to her. She goes, I just said, you're our number 1 D right now. I said, we really need you to elevate. And she did. And she never looked back. She played at her best hockey. And, that's how she got herself a scholarship because she played at a different level. But, Courtney Moser and, Sam Almond, Gabby Rosenthal. It's just, top to bottom. We had, I think about 6 or 7 kids off that team that ended up going to play Division I hockey throughout the years. And it was an unbelievable experience. And I don't care how long I would have coached, I would never coach a group like that. When
did you decide that was one of the best teams ever assembled?
When we had it. And I've seen a lot of teams, and there was just, from the start, because when they came in as that group of seniors, when they came as freshmen, we were supposed to go to state that year. And we ended up losing the game 1-0, and we had 4 kids off that, 4 seniors that ended up going D1, 2 to Brown, 1 to Princeton, 1 to New Hampshire, and we didn't get the job done. And then the next year when they were sophomores, when we weren't supposed to go, that's when we made the trip to state for the first time. Mm-hmm. And we were consolation champs that year. And it was just a different group, the mindset, the leadership. Every kid was a leader. You could have put a captaincy on every kid. And they all led in different ways. And Emily Brown, I would, I talk about Matt Hendricks, but on the female side, she's the greatest leader of any kid. And it's tough to tell the difference between Matt and Emily as far as the leadership goes. Matt is, I would say, a little bit notch higher, but not a whole lot. And she's a special kid. And what's cool about her is when she would always go to our U8 futures team and help them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about character. She had a spring break trip set, and then this U8 team, they had one playoff game that she found out about late. Well, it was the day she was supposed to leave on her spring break. She changed her flight for spring break to go out to watch that U8 team play. So, I mean, it tells you what she is like. And then you start going to those Gopher games, there'd be 35 little Bengals, there, hey, Emily Brown. And, I mean, she is just, as far as a character kid and dealing with youth, and, I mean, she's off the charts.
Is she next in line to be the Blaine High School girls varsity head coach?
Probably not. She's, she's doing her professional thing. So she's playing for that team Sonnet in the Professional Women's Hockey League. I think she wants to continue playing. She's going to be an engineer. So it's really tough to, put in the time commitment to do that. I hear she coached mites at Edina last year. So I don't know how Blaine Youth Hockey let her sneak away, but I'm sure Edina offered her a bit more money than Blaine Youth Hockey could have.
Maybe she snuck into, sabotage Braemar or something, considering Edina is the team that beat you in that state championship game.
Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. I have the box score right in front of me if you want to go through that.
Nope,
Do you want to talk about Lowly Fiddler?
No, I don't. Yeah, we had a chance to score early, and in that game, if we would have scored, I think it would have been different.
Yeah.
And after the second period, we're down, and the tears were just flowing in our locker room, and it wasn't because they're losing. It was because it was the last 17 minutes that group was ever going to play together. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we're not coming back from this one.
So where does that, I hate to keep bringing up your losses, but you do have a couple of these real heartbreakers. Yeah. So where does that loss rank with the loss to Canada in the Women's World Championships and the loss to Hastings?
Well, I mean, to me, that one's the toughest because I was the head coach. The other ones I was an assistant, and so that's a different. In 2001, we had a chance to win the state championship for girls too, and lost 2-1, and we had a chance with breakaway and missed it, and they tucked one in, and that one was really tough too. But they're different when you're the assistant coach because you're not the head coach. Yeah. So I think there's more investment obviously as a head coach because you got to do all the other things. So that was a tough one, especially for that kid or that team because they were such great kids. I wanted it more for them than me.
Very selfless.
Yeah.
Very selfless. To put a bow on your high school career, what has it been like to watch the talent level of women's hockey evolve from, I was young enough I'm old enough, I should say, to remember watching Rhonda and Renee Curtin at Roseville. And that was in Roseville's heyday when they had Marty Surdich and Colin Cody and all these guys. And while the women were talented, they weren't on the same level as boys, and the talent, it was just getting warmed up. Mm-hmm. So what's it been like to watch women's hockey at the high school level in Minnesota go from a grassroots, just getting our feet wet, scrapping for ice time, to the number one producer of collegiate talent in the country?
Well, I mean, the goaltending is the biggest difference. You look at the goalies way back then. I mean, our team in the early years was good. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it would be, to beat a team 8-0 was, fairly routine. And it wasn't necessarily because you were so much better than the other team. The goaltending was just so poor. And I was, we played a number of teams this year, and I'm looking at the goalies going, pretty impressive. And, that change has really, been something. And a couple of years ago, I was watching our section championship game against Park Center. It was 97. It was so slow. I mean, back then it seemed like, okay, this is going pretty good. And we had this Laura Treba, who was a very elite player, 80, she'd get 80 points and, a stud goalie. And we had some very good players on our team. and they didn't seem that slow back then.
Yeah.
And then I watch it now, and I mean, there's the top JV teams right now would have beat those teams, back in the day. You don't seem to see, I don't think you see as many just incredibly elite players anymore. You don't see Chrissy Wendell and Natalie Darwitz anymore.
Okay.
There's good players, but those two would be phenomenal players today. If they played today, they were just, their commitment level and what they did in the off season to get better was incredible. And you lose a lot to that today. Everybody's looking for these quick fixes. And, Chrissy had trained with me for 2 summers during our summer stuff before her first Olympics. And I was watching her stick handle as we got done training, and she's stick handling, and she had a golf ball on her stick. I can't move my hands without anything in them as fast as she was stick handling that golf ball. And I'm like, man, Chrissy, I said, how much time do you spend growing up doing this stuff, and what did you do? She says, you know what? She said, I would spend anywhere from a half an hour to 3 hours a day. Like during the season, it's about half hour off season, more than the 3 hour. And she said, we didn't really do drills. She said, what we do is I'd be on one corner of the garage, my brother Eric would be on the other corner, and my dad would throw hockey equipment all over the garage floor. And we would just have different contests. Who could stick handle through the stuff faster to the other side, or you could knock the other person's ball off their stick and they'd have to start over. And she said it wasn't really like doing drills. She said we just had a lot of fun. And then I was at the Salt Lake City Olympics in the semifinal game, and I sat in front of Scott Darwitz. And there had been an article that came out on Natalie where she had spent as much as 8 hours a day just training on her own. And I'm like, Scott, I said, that was an unbelievable article. I said, she really spent that much time? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, people ask me all the time why she's so good. He goes, she works her ass off. And he said, I could say that.
I did.
And I said, what would she do? He said, well, she would go outside and on tennis shoes, and she would shoot pucks at the net. I don't know how many. And then she would put like rollerblades on and shoot. And then she would have rollerblades off, and she would be stick handling. And she put rollerblades on and stick handling. She's playing floor hockey and things like that. And that's really what you lose nowadays is kids don't do that. They want to go to this program or that program and spend thousands of dollars, and kids are just not in their garage anymore stick handling and shooting. We had a girl, Sammy Nixon, who played for us, and her junior year she was playing with this Christina Bunker, who's our all-time leading scorer, and she had 30-something goals, like almost 70 points. And then the next year, she was essentially playing by herself. We didn't have anybody that could play with her. And the summer before her senior year, she shot 52,000 pucks. And I think I witnessed them, a lot of them, because her and that Bunker would.
52,000?
Yeah. So they were training together, and they would come in and lift at 6 in the morning, and then they would come back. So they were our first training session from noon to 1:30. And then Sammy would be there until we closed down. And she would be stick handling, shooting, and Bunker would stay there for like 4 hours. So I probably witnessed most of those shots, and, we just had her writing down, and then she would leave there, she'd go home. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would do dryland goalie training, and she would come in then and shoot on the goalies for me. It's just, you just don't see as much of that anymore. So I think the overall play has gotten so much better, but I don't think you see the true really standout players like you did.
In your perfect world, how many AAA teams would exist during the summer for hockey?
Zero. Yeah. It's kids need to train, and USA Hockey did that big study on puck possession time. Mm-hmm. So during the Salt Lake City Olympics, they had a bunch of people sitting in the crowd, and they had tablets and stopwatches, and they were timing the best players. And I think Joe Sakic in the gold medal game had the lead. He had the puck on his stick for maybe a minute and 15 seconds, and I think he attempted 5 shots. So the whole reason for USA Hockey doing that study is just to say, hey, everybody who just wants to play these games now, it's like, well, how do you become a better puck handler when the puck's only on your stick? The best player in the world at the time for a minute and 15 seconds. And how do you become a better shooter when you attempt 5 shots in that, 60 minutes of game time? And it was a great study, and that's what gets lost. And we talk to our kids about it all the time, is like, you need to get more specific in your training. You need to become a better shooter. Well, I worked with Scott Bukestad for a while, best shooting instructor on.
Yeah.
He's not going to give me any money for saying his name on here. And I've sent all kinds of people to him. He's never given me a dime.
Maybe he'll give me something. Hey,
Yeah.
Scott.
But I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you go to him? Matt Hendricks, one time I had to, when he was with the Capitals, I had to go get some stuff autographed for one of our events.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to St. Louis Park Ice Arena, and he was there with 15 other guys, NHLers, doing power skating.
Yep.
I'm like, I know Bukestad was working with Mikko Koivu. He works with all these other people. And I'm like, the best players in the world are going to a person like this to improve their skill. Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
And you need it more than they do. But it's just, they want to go to these programs where you're playing most of the time or you're there's 50 people in line and, there's little coaching going on.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Soapbox on that one.
That's okay. I like soapboxes.
Yeah.
Now that you've retired, now that you've stepped away, you're allowed to get on your soapbox a little bit.
I have a lot of soapboxes.
And I'm going to offer you another soapbox spot right here. I read an article from a few years ago where you said, and I quote, "As coaches, you'd think our opinion would be trusted, but through the whole process, the board never asked the coaches if we thought she was capable." And you were referring to a player who was in middle school at the time in the Anoka Hennepin School District. I believe the rule reads if it comes down to two players, you have to take the older one, or are middle schoolers not allowed to play at all?
Well, so what they have is you need to prove you're an accelerated athlete.
Okay.
So when the girls hockey first started, like Christina Bunker played for us as a 7th grader.
Mm-hmm.
And the rule at the time was if the middle school did not offer the program, then they could play high school, provided you didn't cut anybody.
Okay.
So then there was and I have to be careful what I say because I got my hand slapped on the other one. But there was a situation that had happened with a kid, and things got changed to there was a kid that got beat out on a section roster, and there was a something made up where, hey, a 8th grader can't displace a high school kid on a section roster, and then that evolved to a high school kid on just a varsity roster. So the situation we had is at the time we had tried to get this kid, and it wasn't said before the situation that we can't have her. They wanted to wait till trials were over, and the kid played great, and she would have been a second line forward for us, and then so she's all excited. I'm like, and she probably would have been on her first power play, and it's like, okay, well, we have to wait and see what happens now, and they determined, nope, she can't do it. And the kid was absolutely devastated. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Yes, you're good enough. So she ended up playing JV for us. And, my point on the comment was, I had worked for USA Hockey for 20 years. And I was a national evaluator for them. So, the governing body of hockey, and they were flying me all over the country to evaluate talent. And I just kind of said, you know what? I said, the governing body of hockey has chosen me as one of the people to go around and evaluate talent. I said, I think I got a pretty good handle on if this kid can play varsity hockey or not. And that didn't matter, but because it's a team sport, it's hard to prove they're an accelerated athlete.
Right.
So you'll see 8th graders play tennis. You'll see them in track because you got a time, or, it might be a golf or something like that. Catherine Van Aragon won the state golf championship as a 7th grader at Blaine High School. So that's the hard part that coaches have, is that some sports can do it and then others can't. And it's, as a coach at the time, it's like, you know what? I've been hired to do this, and I feel pretty good about my ability to evaluate this talent. And it's kind of like you're second guessing it. And that might change at some point. I know there's a lot of people not happy about it. And, you can get an 8th grader up. So Haley Hansen, who just graduated for us this year, she played for us as an 8th grader. But it's different there because it's such a specific spot.
Yeah.
And not everybody can play it, and we didn't have any goalies. So that was an easy one. Coon Rapids, when Jess Christofferson was coaching there, they only had like 19 kids. So they were allowed to take a couple because it made them viable. So it's been a sticky point. And it's something where it was always allowed, and now it's not, and then you go to the state tournament and you watch all these 8th graders that are just having a tremendous impact. And we had an 8th grader this year that would have been on our varsity. I know Champlain Park, Coon Rapids, they had an 8th grader playing on their U15 teams like that. She'd have been on our varsity, and you lose kids because of that, because there's other programs that will take them on as 8th graders. So they'll leave your program to go play for them. You might not get them back, and there's a lot of schools that haven't.
That was going to be my next question, is how much stickier it's gotten now that you see the 7th and 8th graders playing key roles on teams. I went to a section final, and I saw 2 7th graders on the penalty kill. And you might think, well, they're not ready to play, but they are ready to play. They're playing right now. They're playing really well on the penalty kill. And your schools are at such a disadvantage because another school, like you just said, can come in and say, you can play for us as an 8th grader. And then once you get established at a program, it's a lot harder to get somebody to leave.
Yep. Well, especially with the transfer rule where you got to do it before your freshman year. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, you're there. And, I'd made the point too. I said, look at Natalie Darwitz. She played as a 7th grader. I said, and right here, she could not play for the Blaine High School team. She's an Olympian. Arguably the best female that's ever played hockey in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And she can't play on our team. Yep. I mean, it's like that's a tough pill to swallow, but it is what it is, and you make do.
You make do. And on a happier note, we're going to move on to Haley Hansen for a moment, because she's another player who I feel is kind of like an Emily Brown, where she's been such a linchpin of your program, and it's almost fitting that you're stepping down when she is moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's exceptional, and it's hard to say who your best is. Mm-hmm. Jody Horak, pretty tough to beat her. She was the recipient of the 25-year, top goalie over the first 25 years. As far as talent-wise, speed, skating, Haley she's the best goalie we've had. The only knock on her, she's 5'3". When she
plays like she's 6'11".
Yep. When she was an 8th grader, I think I had 15 Division I schools calling me on her. My opinion, I think she's the best goalie in Minnesota. It didn't come out that way, but I mean, when you look at what she's done, she's had over 3,400 shots, and her career save percentage is .929. Now, there's other goalies that are good, but we were looking at what's been in front of her. So in her 5 years at Blaine, there's been one Division I player, and that was Ramsey Parent, who's been essentially a 4th liner at St. Cloud or at Ohio State. There's been 4 Division III players and 2 club hockey players. That is it, as far as kids that have gone on to play in college. And we've been playing Andover, and we used to play Edina, and we play Minnetonka every year. And we were playing teams with multiple Division I players, and she's
on every shift.
On every shift. And every time we have played Minnetonka, I mean, I'll get a message from their kids. They go, she is without question the best goalie we play. And it's just, she's really, really good, but she's a far better person. I mean, she is, when I first met her, her and her dad come up and she goes, "Hello, sir, I'm Haley Hansen." I'm like, holy cow. And I've never been thanked so much in my entire lifetime. It's everything you do for, thank you so much. And I mean, she's the most coachable kid. And I've been fortunate because I've got to work with the best goalies in the world on the female side of the game. And the one thing you learn working with those elite players is that you can go up to them and say, "Hey, I'd like you to try this." And immediately they can do it. And most kids in the high school level and younger, you go, "Try this," and I mean, they can't grasp it. She was a kid that could get it immediately, which was exciting. And I mean, she always wanted to watch video, and she, "Hey, could we get an hour and do just a goalie practice?" She's a 3.9 GPA. she has ended up being a 4-time All-State kid for us. And it's just, I mean, she's the most coachable kid I've ever had in my life. And it's tough to say too, but she might be my favorite player that I've ever coached. She should have been on our 2017 team because character-wise, I mean, she just that was the mode of all those other kids. And I've been fortunate. I mean, we've Gabby Rosenthal at Ohio State now, and Emily Brown, and Christina Bunker, Sammy Nixon, Krista Johnson. You just go on the line of just, you just don't find kids of that quality. And she's, to put her towards the top of that, says a lot about her. But character-wise, her parents is the best set of parents I've ever had. I've never had parents that have been so supportive. The amount of positive text messages and emails that I would receive from them was off the charts. And I was worried coming in because Haley's dad was a goalie and had worked with her. And a lot of times when you're in that situation, well, my dad tells me this, or, my coach tells me this. And goalies have become harder to coach because they go to this goalie school and work with this guy, and they don't want to listen to anybody else. It's like, you need to listen to multiple people because there's multiple things you can learn. And never once did I ever have that. And I was talking to her dad after the first game in the lobby, and I said, I just want you to know I absolutely love your kid. I said, she is an incredible kid and a phenomenal goalie. I said, you've done a great job with her. He goes, you can do more with her than I could. And it's like, and it's been all nothing but support, and it is a good time to go out because it's my first year coaching was a D1 kid. Well, it was actually two, Daphne Barnes, who was first female, but we didn't have girls hockey then. So she went to play at Princeton, and then we had Jim Molman on our boys. So we had those two right away. So to start with Division I goaltender and finish it is a good idea, I think.
It's a couple of handsome bookends you've got there, a couple of D1 goaltenders.
Yeah, with a few in between too. So
now that you have stepped away, we've talked a little bit off camera about some of your passion projects, and I want to give you a little bit more of a platform to tell folks what you're up to with your Veterans Memorial that you're working on getting built and some of your involvement with the military.
Yeah, well, I run the Veterans Day program at Blaine High School, which has been awesome. I mean, it's gone over really well, and the nice part about that is, we put service and sacrifice in front of 3,000 kids once a year. And then I just approached the mayor one day and said, hey, I'd like to lead a group to put a elite level memorial park in the city because we didn't have anything. And he was a Korean and Vietnam vet, so he loved the idea and had me talk to the VFW commander. And I ended up proposing to the city council and spent $2,500 of my own money to get a 501c3, and then just started designing all these monuments. So when it's done, there's going to be 18 monuments that will be part of the park. Right now we have 7 in. A World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam War on Terror, Purple Heart, and a Civil War monument. And then this spring and early summer, we're going to be putting in an Honoring Women in Service monument and a POW MIA. And then we're going to put in a memorial bench for the guy named Dick Barton, who was a World War II vet. And then we run a great Memorial Day program. In the last 2 years, we've presented flags. One was to girl named Megan Valentine, whose dad was a very elite Navy SEAL. So we presented the flag to her, and she was 3 when he was killed in training, getting ready for his 10th deployment. He was part of SEAL Team 6 the last 12 years of his life. And then we honored another family, a guy named Eric Finneganum, who was from Yap Island, Micronesia. He joined the U.S. military because he wanted to become a U.S. citizen. And 3 weeks after he got his citizenship, he was killed in action in a mortar attack, and his daughter was 1. And we presented a flag to her as well. So seeing those two kids receive their father's flag, I mean, you can't. You asked me earlier if you cry much. You tend to get a tear on that. And so we had planned on doing something for Gold Star. And so we're putting in a Gold Star Children's Monument, which is going to be in the likeness of Megan Valentine, because the Star Tribune had taken just a phenomenal picture of her with her eyes closed holding the flag. I actually contacted that photographer from the Star Tribune that took it and invited them, and she's like, oh, that's awesome, so honored. And so we have that going in, and then we have they're called Freedom Rock. There's a guy in Iowa, and he paints these beautiful murals on these large boulders, and his initial goal was to put one in every county in Iowa, and he's done that now. Now he's on a 50-state tour, and I think there's 2 or 3 of them in Minnesota. And he's going to start painting ours on September 7th. So we'll have that in too. So we got a good start going. We still have a fallen soldier monument we're fundraising for, a Vietnam era soldier statue. Then we have 5 individual branch monuments, and then our biggest monument is our Armed Services Monument. I think I might have to redesign that one. The fundraising for it has been way more difficult than I thought it would be. And that monument itself is $824,000. So that monument itself.
Is that with inflation?
Yeah. No, it might be up a little higher now. So I might try to do a redesign on that to try to get it down closer to 500,000. But that monument itself is more than all the other monuments combined.
Okay. So between the coaching, football, coaching hockey, your step down from hockey, it doesn't sound like you'll be at a loss for things to do. Are you just the type of person who just has a go button? There is no slow down. There is no stop. It's just go.
Yeah, I am. There's times I'll be at home and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do anything today. And then a half an hour later, my computer's out and I'm working on stuff. So, I mean, the veterans stuff has really become a passion for me. Doing these projects and doing the Veterans Day program, the amount of veterans I've met and heard their stories is absolutely incredible. They are so thankful for like that Veterans Day program and for this park because they feel like they're not forgotten. And we had one year, Julie Nelson from Care 11 was our MC. And she was phenomenal. She stayed for like an hour after. She's taken pictures with people and made sure everybody was taken care of before she left. And we invite all veterans to sit in the stands and take a whole group photo. So I'm standing next to her and we're watching this photo taken, and one of the veterans is like, Steve and Julie, you guys got to get into this photo. And we're like, no, we're not. No, get in here. Okay, so we go and sit in there, and then after the picture's done, everybody's coming down, and I'm thanking all these veterans. And I had a 78-year-old Korean War vet come up, and he said, I just want to thank you. He says, this is the first time that I felt like someone's appreciated me for my service since I got out of the Korean War. And I'm like, whew, I mean, that hits you hard. And you start talking to all these other vets, and they're just, just so thankful. And that's where, I mean, coaching to me has really become a thankless job. And you have some people that we always say you got some people that are with you. I mean, they love you. And then you got some people that can't stand you. It doesn't matter what you do, they're just not going to like you. And then you got a whole group in between. But, I first realized that. So we were talking about Dave Nelson, and I saw him at the Minnesota Football Coaches Association banquet probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And he had a really rough group of parents, and he just looked terrible. I mean, he just looked beat up. He looked tired. And I started listening to the stories. I'm like, how on earth could anyone have a bad word to say about you? I mean, to me, walk on water. I said, you're the reason I became a coach. There's nothing that anybody could remotely say negative about you. And they did. And it's, various reasons. Their kid's not playing or, whatever happens. But it's like, okay, as a coach, if this can happen to him, I mean, it can happen to anybody. And the longer it goes, it's, a banquet will be done. And we experience this with all sports. And you just spent 4 months with their kid, and you'll have 3 people come up to you, 3 sets of parents maybe come up to you after and say, hey, thanks. Whether you like what we did or not, hey, thanks for your time, or something like that. And it's just, there's just nothing there. And like I say, that Hansen family, I mean, they probably make up the thank yous for everybody. But it's every year it just gets to be less and less thankfulness of what you do. And, we really did a lot of other stuff that other programs didn't do because we had a great focus on teaching life lessons. And we had a thing one time we just called it Make a Difference. And that I went with some football coaches at St. Thomas because their defensive coordinator used to play for us. So we're talking, and we were at their big team meeting, and then they broke off into offense and defense. And I was behind the coach, and he opened the door, and I just held it open. And 50, because I counted them, 50 defensive players walked through that door. 48 of them said thank you to me. And the 2 that didn't say thank you were in the middle of a conversation when they walked in. I go, that's unbelievable. So then I went to our school, and I'm just going to do this. So a class was coming up to our library. I held the door open. 33 people walked through that door. 2 kids said thank you. And then I'm like, okay. So I just kept doing it. And just little things. So then we just did a thing with our group. It's called Make a Difference. And what we did is we made our kids do something every day to either make a difference in their school, in the life of somebody else, their community. Could be as simple as, somebody left their tray in the lunchroom and you brought it up. Well, that means the custodian didn't have to do it. Or kids would get creative. At Kenzie Wiley she was driving and she saw a homeless person and right next to a caribou, she went in and bought the guy a cup of coffee. Kids just started getting creative in what they did. And after every practice, then we would go in the locker room and kids would write down what they did. And then we would go around one by one and then they would say what they did to make a difference. And it was awesome. And we had a girl named Deanna Lemire, and when she graduated, her mom came up. She says, I just want you to know how important that Make a Difference has been in my daughter's life. She said, we were at Northtown Mall, and we were walking out of the store, and we were halfway down the walkway, and Deanna saw this elderly lady start coming up. She said she stopped, turned, went back, and held the door open until that woman went through. She said she never on earth would have done anything like that had she not been exposed to this type stuff. And then Deanna sent me the greatest email. Went up to North Dakota to play soccer, and she says, hey, I just want you to know how important that Make a Difference has been in my life. And she said, I held the door open there, and nobody said thank you to me. So it's just little things, and it's, we used to do a teddy bear toss, and we give bears to Children's Hospital, Ronald McDonald House, and we do adopt a family, and anything we could find to, expose kids to, doing good things for people and helping people out, we really tried to do. And you start getting complaints on some of that stuff. Well, I can't believe you're making my kid do something like that. It's like, really? I mean, all they simply had to do is hold the door open for somebody.
Is it that hard?
Yeah, it's not that hard. And it's just gotten to be such a thankless job. And I mean, there was 35 new head coaches in girls hockey last year, and they average about 25 a year, and 98% of them are getting out due to parents. I didn't get out because of parents. I'm kind of in that mode of, I'm just going to stay around and just tick you off more.
I've got tenure. I'm here forever.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to go out on my terms, not yours. And, I had been contemplating this, and you said is a good time to finish up your career with Haley as the goalie. And that's true. And that was definitely in consideration. But there's so many things that go along with being a head coach that coaching just became not fun to me anymore. I mean, it's fun working with the kids, but the fundraising and dealing with parent emails and everything else that goes along with it, I mean, for $6,000, it's just not very good. And I had to do a coaching practicum for college one time, and I kept track of my hours for football. One year, it turned out I made 29 cents an hour.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I make far less than that as a head hockey coach. I mean, because it's not just during the season; you're doing all the stuff out of the season too.
Right.
So the veteran aspect of it, I mean, everything I'm around, the amount of veterans that have come up to me in tears and say, "Boy, thank you for doing this. This place means so much." And I mean, it's routine, and it inspires you to do more for them when you see just how emotional that they get. And, Dave Nelson's dad, Stan, I would consider him my idol, is an Omaha Beach D-Day vet. And I reunited him with a shipmate. They hadn't seen each other in 75 years, a guy named Pete Fanicone from Mays Landing, New Jersey. And I met Pete for about a day and a half when he was here, and then he ended up passing away later that year, just after Easter. And he had such an impact on me, I actually flew out to New Jersey for his funeral. Met his whole family and Facebook friends with several of them now. And I haven't met his other shipmate. I bet we've talked on the phone 100 times. He's from Tennessee, talks like this. He's like, Steve, I appreciate you, buddy. So
that's
it's just
dead on for a Tennessee accent, by the way.
So, I mean, it's just a blast to talk to him. But June 6th happened 78 years ago. And Stan will talk about what happened the day before. He'll talk about coming across. He'll say before we hit the beach, he said we throw our anchor out about 30 yards before, and we'd gun it so we're grounded enough and drop the flaps. And They had 2 flaps, so they would drop 200 people at a time. And then he said they had so much time to get off, and then we'd pull the flaps, use the anchor to pull us off the beach. He said, and then you know what happens after that. I go, here you got a guy that's 102, going to be 103 in September. This happened 78 years ago, and he still can't talk about what he saw on Omaha Beach on that day. And his shipmates have talked about it. That Pete Fanicone, he actually made a DVD because his whole mission in life was to make sure that all those that lost their lives that day never got forgotten. Mm-hmm. And then there's Jack Claiborne, the one in Tennessee. There's a group called Forever Young that flies veterans over to Omaha Beach on anniversaries, and he's been over there twice, and they actually made him a chapter in a book. So he shared the chapter with me, and he talks about some stuff in there. And I don't know if there's a guy that survived when they dropped on that first landing. And he said when they landed, he said the water was blood red as far as you can see. And you meet them. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And my uncle was, if you've seen the movie We Were Soldiers, my uncle was in that battle. And he got wounded 2 battles later in the Battle of Bong Song as a Vietnam vet, Purple Heart recipient. And he passed away in 2009 and carried his flag draped casket into Fort Snelling. It's one of the most unbelievable feelings I've ever had in my life when you have a service member and then you're in that cemetery. It's absolutely incredible. And it's that kind of stuff that has really inspired me. And our team the past couple of years has scrimmaged the Minnesota Warriors. So I ended up getting a call from one of their coaches that said, hey, I'd love it if you come and coach with us. So I think I'm going to do that. It's just a great group of guys, and I've gone to watch them play and took pictures for them once, and pretty intense games, and it's fun, and you don't have to worry about parents, I don't think. And
the Minnesota Warriors are a group of veterans who play hockey.
Yeah, so it's veterans have been wounded, or they have expanded it to more mental stuff now, so PTSD stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty incredible too, because we pair our kids up with a warrior, and then they go out together for the national anthem, and the national anthem for me is big. And I made a video of some of Saving Private Ryan because Stan Nelson said that's exactly what it was like. Some of We Were Soldiers because my uncle said that's exactly what it was like. Some of Pearl Harbor. So, I said, I'm not going to apologize for showing you this. I said, obviously some of the stuff is graphic, but you don't know what you don't know. And when you're standing there for the national anthem, I can't stand when people move. And they're rocking side to side and moving their feet. It drives me absolutely nuts. So our kids, they're even spacing, feet on the line, sticks in front, helmet, don't move. And then a couple seconds after the national anthem, one of our captains taps their stick, and then they can go. So that's been an important aspect for me. And what's really cool is you go on to watch these kids in college. I have video of Gabby Rosenthal. She's national champion last year and runner-up this year, and she is the last one for Ohio State to move. Everybody else, I got them turning, and their sticks are there, and she's still standing. And when Ohio State is playing the Gophers, her and Emily Brown, they're the last 2 to move. So it's really cool when you see that, because then you're going, okay, these kids understand. So that's kind of, that's what is driving me now is to keep doing things for these veterans and hopefully keep passing the messages on to these younger kids on what people have done for this country and why you see that old guy with the Vietnam hat or whatever, you go up and to that person and say thank you. I mean, if you're a veteran, wear that hat and go to a restaurant I'm buying you dinner. And it's just how it is. I'm a sucker for that. I'm like, oh, there's one. Give me his check.
Oh, it doesn't make you a sucker. Yeah. I think it makes you a hell of a nice guy.
I always do it anonymously. I said, you don't need to know. And one time the waitress ratted me out. It was a 95-year-old World War II vet. And then his family came over and were thankful and just started telling stories. It was incredible.
Well, this has been incredible. Steve Geider, you are stepping down from the Blaine Girls High School hockey program. Thank you for coming in today and telling stories. This has been a blast. I hope you enjoy your bottle of slightly warm Martinelli's apple cider. But again, congrats on a great career, and thanks for joining us today. I
appreciate you having me.
You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. You need to stay